Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brett Heinze.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be with each of you this morning. I will echo the sentiments that have been already shared. You guys could be doing anything. You could be anywhere. And you've chosen to spend time with me. And you've chosen to do something very important to me, and that is examine life from a perspective other than your own. The greatest thing each of us can do is to take a moment and step outside of ourselves. And it's so wonderful. Usually when I speak, I'm at a conference, and I'm the only one talking about travelers with disabilities. But today, I'm in a room full of change makers. I'm in a room full of people who have dedicated themselves professionally and personally to making a difference. So the title of my talk is Going Beyond Statistics. I'm going to share some statistics with you, but going beyond statistics is vitally important because I am a reminder, and the 57 million Americans or 61 million Americans like me who have a permanent physical disability are a reminder of why each of you does what you do. It can be easy to get lost in the minutia of our jobs, to only look at graphs, to only look at success rates from 30,000 feet. But I am why you do what you do. And so to learn a little bit more about me, I'm going to tell you about my company. So I've got a 20-year background as a journalist, public affairs, and PR professional. And I used to travel a lot for work. And regardless of who was making the reservation, whether it was myself, whether it was my executive assistant, corporate travel, about 80% of the time I would get to where I was going and there wouldn't be the roll-in shower that I needed at the hotel, right? So what do I do in that instance? Well, human nature tells us that when we're upset, we bring it to somebody's attention, right? But hospitality is a fascinating industry in that we put people with the least amount of experience, making the least amount of money right in front of, and we say you're going to be front of house and you're going to deal with, everybody coming into the hotel. Well, it turns out that most of the time the hotel staff really didn't know what a roll-in shower was or what rooms were accessible. And so I decided to make a difference and pivot. And for the last 7 years, I've been traveling the globe talking about the importance of accessibility. And so here are some pretty basic numbers. When I'm in Silicon Valley searching for investment, I hear a lot of the same things, which is, well, we appreciate you, Brett, but people with disabilities are a niche market. Ladies and gentlemen, you know this. I'm preaching to the choir here, but we are not a niche market. We are not a niche market. If everybody with a disability decided to move to Canada and everybody in Canada moved out, we would almost double the population of Canada, right? So we're not a niche market, and that's just the United States. So I want to really, drive that home. And so again, here's some more statistics. You guys can read these on the screen. But why is this important? Why am I here today? Why did I travel from Phoenix, Arizona to Paris? I came here because I want to make absolutely crystal clear that each of you has a responsibility to do everything you can to make a difference. Every single one of you in this room has that responsibility. It can be easy, if we allow ourselves, it can be easy to be overwhelmed at the state of the world, right? Things aren't always the way that we want them to be on any number of fronts. And if we allow ourselves, we can shut off, we can tune out, we can become disengaged. But who wins? Who wins when we do that? Nobody. In fact, we all lose. And so the challenge that I have for each of you today is to think in the context of your jobs, of your personal lives, what can you do to make a difference? What can you do to make a difference? And again, you'll see a theme from my talk, and that is my perspective. This is what looks to be an ordinary airline seat, and I'm going to share with you on this next slide the worst moment of my traveling life. When I see what's on this next slide, my heart is in my stomach. I start to pray, and I just hope that everything goes okay. Let's see the next slide. I've done a wonderful job of building it up. So here I am in my seat, loving life, getting ready to rock and roll, and bam, I look out the window, and ladies and gentlemen, what do I see? I see a $10,500 polished titanium wheelchair that looks a lot like mine. Oh wait, it is mine. Just sitting by the baggage handler. And I don't talk about the price of my wheelchair so that everybody says, oh wow, that's really fancy, that's really expensive. I talk about it because it's not like I have 4 more at the house, right? And people with disabilities, I will only speak for me, but I want to be crystal clear on this. I do not define myself by my disability. I do not define myself by my disability. I tend to repeat what I want you to remember. So I want you to remember that. You know, I'm a proud graduate of The Ohio State University, which is a top 20 public university in the States. I am an entrepreneur, I'm a husband, I'm an uncle, I'm all kinds of things. And oh yeah, I just happen to use a chair. And I can tell you, when you're sitting in business class and you look to your right and you see your chair, the thing you need to do your job, sitting on the tarmac, unattended, that is a bad day at the office, friends, right? And so how do we avoid that? How do we make sure that that doesn't happen? Well, the answer is service. Each of us plays an important role. None of us can exist professionally without the other, all right? Everybody in an airline situation, everybody in an airport situation is dependent on their colleague to make sure that everything goes without a hitch. You know, the difference between, you know, a 3-star hotel and a 5-star hotel, yeah, some hotels are nicer, some airlines are nicer, some aircraft are nicer, but it really boils down to service, right? So if you're on the airport side, what do you do, what mechanisms do you have in place to track, you know, a PRM's wheelchair? How do you treat it? This is what I say all the time when I travel. I have a wonderful relationship with American Airlines, and no matter where I'm going or what I'm doing, I find out, I go to the gate and I introduce myself very plainly, very happily, and I say, please, please, treat my wheelchair as if it's someone you love, right? Treat my wheelchair as if it's somebody who is so important to you, you cannot imagine the world without them. And you know what that does? In that moment, we have a connection, right? And that's what we're in. That's what the airline industry is. Yes, the airline industry is mass transit, right? We're getting billions of people from point A to point B. But each one of us is traveling for a reason, right? Some of us are traveling to see friends and loved ones. Some of us are traveling for work. But we're all traveling for a reason. And so if we can remember to treat PRM's chairs and other mobility devices like somebody we love, then we will make sure that that device is delivered without incident. Now, I'm not naive. I know that airports are a busy place. I know that a flight being delayed by 30 minutes can cost an airline millions and millions of dollars. And so what I would challenge each of you to do today, and William did such a wonderful job of setting the stage, is think outside the box, right? Be brave, be different, be bold. I can demand excellence from each of you. Why? Why? I'm not sitting here saying you must do this, you must do this. No. The reason I can demand excellence from each of you is because I demand excellence from myself, right? And that's how we have to approach this challenge. I don't believe in problems. I believe in challenges. And I believe that together we can solve those challenges. But we have to have courage, right? It takes courage to solve challenges. We've all sat in meetings talking about PRMs, talking about budgets, talking about how razor-thin profit margins are, etc., etc., etc. In those moments, in that instance, I would challenge each of you, when it's least convenient, to have the courage to speak up. I don't care where we work or what we do. If we want to know if something's a priority for any given organization, follow the money. Follow the money. If your airport or your airline isn't taking PRM seriously or isn't taking us seriously enough, you can find that out pretty quickly. Look to see a budget. Look to see a budget. And if money's tight, which it always is, move some stuff around, right? Get creative. But it's difficult. It's difficult being creative, especially in this environment. Especially in this environment when we're all fighting for market share. We're all trying to do the very best we can with what we have. We're all trying to advance our own personal careers, right? We have a ton of agendas when each of us goes to work in the morning. The only thing I'm asking each of you is, quite honestly, to remember me, right? The reason I named my company Bread Approved Incorporated is not because I'm an egomaniac, although I do think the name is catchy, right? The reason I named my company Bread Approved is because if you have never met somebody with a permanent physical disability, if you've never met somebody with cerebral palsy like myself, and we have an interaction, I want you to remember me. And what I want you to remember the most about me, number one, is that I'm a cool guy, right? I'm a cool guy. I'm a nice guy. I'm just like each of you. The only difference between you and me is that I sit down more. That's it. That's it. I need this thing to be the best version of myself, right? And without it, imagine what would have happened today or this morning if I had to crawl into this meeting, right? I definitely would have gotten your attention, but guess what? I'm not about to ruin my suit, right? It's not happening. It's not happening. This is an expensive suit, just for the record. So, again, what I want you to remember is that I and every PRM who rolls through your airport, every passenger with reduced mobility who flies on an aircraft, we are people first. It's not disabled people. It's people with disabilities, right? Put the person first. Why is that critical? Because we don't define ourselves, as I mentioned before, we don't define ourselves by our disability, right? And the other thing that I want to be crystal clear on is that while there are about 5 million chair users in the United States, give or take, of that number that I mentioned, 61 million Americans with a permanent physical disability, 70% of those have a disability that is not visible, right? So it could be hearing, could be vision, it could be, any number of things. The aging population, baby boomers, AARP did a study last year, said that in 2019, baby boomers were going to take between 4 and 5 trips, and on each of those trips, per person, they're going to spend $6,600 US, right? And so we can do the math there in terms of the market share. So I don't only want you guys to think about me. I want this to be a broader contextual discussion, right? And yes, making sure that we cater to people with disabilities, that is super important. But it's so much more than the right thing to do. People have called me in the past, hey, Brett, you're a tremendous social justice warrior. And I wear that with pride, right? I wear that with pride. But I'm also a businessman, right? So let's get real for a second and let's talk about that. The reason I share those statistics about how many people, in the States have a disability, how much money we spend, and you're going to hear more from Laurel at Open Doors later today. So all of that stuff, the reason that I focus on that is because it is I want it to be crystal clear that making sure we treat passengers with reduced mobility with dignity and respect is more than the right thing to do. It's good business. I mentioned that I have a tremendous relationship with American Airlines. Why? Why is that? It's because they treat me with dignity, right? If I have a problem, they work to resolve it. When I'm speaking to them, they look me in the eye. My wife fortunately is able-bodied, and I can't tell you how many times we've traveled together for fun or gone out to dinner, and the maitre d' is looking at Claudia and making eye contact with Claudia, and I don't know where I am. I must be invisible, right? So I just very, very calmly, very plainly say, hey, friend, I'm paying, right? So eye contact is key, And making sure that you have mechanisms in place to solve challenges, right? Because they're going to come up. And I would strongly encourage each of you to audit your processes. If you have things in place, if you have things that you do and ways that you shepherd PRMs through your airport or work with us on an airline basis, drill for that stuff. Every once in a while, do a code red or call it whatever you want internally, right? But make sure that if there's a challenge, everybody knows what to do, because the biggest issue is miscommunication, because nothing is perfect. But nothing will ever be perfect unless we strive to make it so. And that's where each of you comes in. You have to promise me, and more importantly, promise yourselves that you're going to strive to make it so. And so this might look like a random restroom. This is a family restroom in the Dublin airport. And I took a picture of this because this is the cleanest, nicest international restroom I have ever seen. And they have bar overkill, right? So in the United States, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is not a high standard. Instead, it's a bare minimum, right? And so this is a perfect example of what we can do from an international standpoint, right? Things don't have to be perfect. But this, and I wish I had a wide-angle lens. And so if you're going through your airport and it's a smaller airport and you don't have a ton of money, don't worry about it. Just think about what you can do. And if you're ever in Dublin, find this restroom. I don't even remember the terminal, but this thing was so clean, I could have had a dinner on the floor. It was amazing. If every airport restroom was like this, my life would be so much simpler, right? And so, I guess wrapping up before I take questions, this stat kind of jumped out at me. In 2016, the net profit margin for U.S. airlines was $2.56 per passenger, right? Not a lot of money, not a lot of room for error. You'll notice that quote I found in this academic paper, right? That was their summation. That made me cry. Honestly, that made me sad. It filled me with, I got a little angry. And then I said to myself, I'm going to share this with my friends at the Ozion conference because each of you knows what I do. We can do better. We can and must do better. And again, the key to that is communication. The key to that is having those processes in place. The key to that is knowing that if a wheelchair is damaged, having a backup chair is not the greatest thing in the world, but it's certainly better than nothing, right? Drilling for emergencies in terms of PRMs with challenges. How do you handle them? Talking to people, putting the person first, looking people in the eye, getting down on my level. Some people might not require that, but nobody in a chair is ever going to say, that jerk, he got down on my level. He got down on one knee and had a substantive conversation, right? Now, if you just had knee surgery, don't do it. But the point is, make an effort. Because when you make an effort as an airline employee or anywhere in hospitality, a very sticky market, we are going to remember that, and we're going to come back. And we have, people with disabilities in the United States have about $23 billion in discretionary income to spend. $23 billion. Wouldn't you want a piece of that? Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure spending time with you. Now I'll open it up for questions.
Brett, thank you very much.